My girlfriend stepped outside to take a call, and the room changed its temperature. That sounds dramatic, I know, but it did. The hum of the fluorescent lights felt louder, the coffee on the counter went untouched, and I suddenly became aware of how long I'd been standing there with my hands in my jacket pockets, pretending I wasn't waiting for something I couldn't name. We were at her family's auto repair shop, one of those places that smells like oil and old rubber, with a radio permanently stuck between stations. I'd come to help for the afternoon, mostly to be useful, mostly to prove I could belong. When my girlfriend's phone rang, she stepped outside without thinking, pushing the door open with her shoulder. Cold air rushed in. Then it closed. And that's when her sister looked up at me. I'd met Mara before. A few holidays, a couple of family dinners. She was mid-40s, maybe older. Hard to tell, because she carried herself like someone who didn't need to count years. She wore her hair pinned up messily, like she'd done it with one hand while finishing something else. No makeup that I could see. Grease smudge on her knuckle. Confident in a way that didn't announce itself. She'd been sorting invoices at the desk, glasses low on her nose. When she smiled, it wasn't wide or flirtatious. It was small, almost cautious. "Well," she said, tapping the papers into a neat stack. "Looks like it's just us for a minute." I nodded too fast. "Yeah, work thing." I figured. Mara set the stack aside and leaned back in her chair. It creaked. She didn't fix it. She just watched me, not staring exactly, but not looking away either. There was a pause where I thought I should say something normal. Weather. Engines. Anything. Instead, she stood up. "Coffee?" she asked, already reaching for the pot. It had gone dark and bitter. She poured it anyway, filled a mug I hadn't noticed before, slid it toward me across the counter. Our fingers brushed. Not a spark, more like static. The kind you feel after taking off a sweater. "Thanks," I said, though I didn't drink it. She hesitated, like she was deciding whether to sit or stand. Finally, she leaned against the counter, arms folded loosely. I noticed then how still she was. No fidgeting, no rushing to fill the silence. It made me acutely aware of my own movements, shifting my weight, clearing my throat, glancing toward the door. "You help out here a lot?" she asked. "Whenever I can," I said. "I mean, when I'm not working." She nodded. "She talks about that. About you. A beat. About how hard you try." That landed heavier than I expected. I laughed too loud. "I guess." Mara tilted her head, studying me like a car that made a strange noise only sometimes. "You don't have to try so hard," she said. Then, almost immediately, "Not that it's a bad thing." Another pause. Longer this time. The radio fizzed. Somewhere in the back, a tool clanged and then stopped. She took off her glasses and set them down carefully, like the moment deserved attention. When she looked at me without them, her eyes were softer. Tired, maybe, or honest. "I've been wanting to say this," she said, and her voice dropped, not in volume, but in weight. The door outside opened, letting in a gust of cold and my girlfriend's laughter, distant and unaware. Mara didn't finish her sentence. She just smiled again, the same small, careful smile, and pushed herself away from the counter. That unfinished thought followed me home. It still does. It was late, after closing. The shop had gone quiet in that hollow way places do when the work leaves, but the day hasn't caught up yet. The radio was off. The big doors were half down, leaving a strip of orange streetlight cutting across the concrete floor. I was there because my girlfriend had missed her bus and asked me to wait with her sister until she could get a ride. But then she didn't come back right away. Mara and I ended up alone again, this time with a reason to stay. She handed me a clipboard and asked if I could help count inventory. Her tone was practical, almost flat. No small smile. No softness. Just task-oriented distance. It felt intentional, like she was placing furniture between us. We worked in parallel, not together, her at the shelves, me at the workbench. I could hear the quiet sounds she made without meaning to. The click of a pen, a slow breath when she reached too high, the faintest hum when she forgot herself. She didn't look at me unless she had to. I noticed her hands first. They were strong, scarred in places, nails short and clean. When she flipped pages, she used her thumb in a precise, practiced way. When she paused, she rubbed the side of her finger against her palm, like she was grounding herself. You can skip that shelf, she said without turning around. Those numbers never line up AC way. Nothing ever does, I said, mostly to fill the air. She let out a small laugh before she could stop it. It surprised both of us. She cleared her throat and kept working. A few minutes passed. The quiet thickened. You don't have to stay, she said eventually. She might take a while. I said. And I stayed. Mara slowed then. I could see it in the way she stood still too long, the way her shoulders dropped like she'd set something down. She reached for a box, missed the grip, steadied it with her knee. Tired? I asked. She hesitated. Just enough. Yeah, she said. More than I should be. She sat on the edge of the counter, careful, like she didn't want to take up space. The confidence I'd noticed before felt thinner. Not gone, just folded inward. You ever get the feeling, she said, staring at the floor, that you've built your life so efficiently there's no room left to breathe? I didn't answer right away. It felt like a question you don't rush. Sometimes, I said. She nodded once. Didn't look at me. Her laugh this time was quieter, almost embarrassed. Figures. My phone buzzed. A text from my girlfriend, still waiting. Sorry. I didn't reply. Mara stood, brushed invisible dust from her jeans, then paused in front of me. Close enough that I could smell oil and coffee and something warmer underneath. She reached past me for the clipboard, her arm hovering for half a second longer than necessary. Thanks for helping, she said. Her fingers touched my wrist, not accidental, not quite deliberate either. She didn't pull away immediately. Neither did I. When she finally stepped back, the space she left felt louder than the silence before. I replay that moment more than I should. The weight of it, the almost. Especially the way she looked at me after, like she was hoping I hadn't noticed. The night it almost happened, it wasn't romantic in the way people imagine. No candles, no music, just rain hitting metal hard enough to make conversation feel optional. A delivery truck had broken down out front, blocking the garage exit, and Mara asked if I could stay a bit and help her finish up paperwork while we waited it out. My girlfriend was home, already asleep. She'd texted me earlier, told me not to rush. I told myself that's why I stayed. The office was small, too small once the door was shut. A single lamp on the desk threw warm light over stacks of receipts and smudged fingerprints. The rest of the shop sat in shadow, humming faintly like it was holding its breath. Mara sat across from me, glasses back on, hair looser than usual, damp at the edges from stepping outside earlier. She looked tired in a way that didn't ask for sympathy, just acknowledgement. We worked quietly, pages sliding, pen scratching. The rain filled the gaps. At some point, she pushed a folder aside and rubbed her eyes with the heels of her hands. I used to love storms, she said, like the thought had slipped out before she could catch it. Used to? I asked. She lowered her hands slowly. Yeah. A pause. Before everything had consequences. I smiled without meaning to, then stopped. That wasn't a joke kind of sentence. She noticed. Her mouth curved, then flattened again. Sorry, that sounded heavier than I meant. It's okay, I said. You don't have to, I know. She leaned back in her chair, which put her knee against mine. She didn't move it away. Neither did I. The contact felt loud. My whole body seemed to rearrange itself around it. She stared at the desk. You ever meet someone at the wrong time? She asked. My chest tightened. I thought about my girlfriend asleep. About the way Mara didn't look at me when she said it. Yeah, I said carefully. I think most people do. She laughed, soft and humorless. That's not an answer. I swallowed. It's the safest one. That finally made her look up. There was something unguarded there, just for a second. Then her phone lit up on the desk. The screen buzzed once. A name flashed. She stiffened immediately. She didn't answer it. Just flipped the phone face down, like that settled something. Everything okay? I asked. Fine, she said too quickly. Then, after a beat, it's just old noise. The rain eased. The truck horn sounded outside. One short blast, a signal. Mara stood abruptly, knee pulling away from mine. The space where it had been felt cold. She gathered the folders, stacked them with unnecessary precision. Looks like you can head out, she said. All business again. I stood too. We were close, closer than before. I could see a faint scar near her eyebrow I hadn't noticed. I wanted to ask about it. I wanted to say something else entirely. She hesitated, fingers tightening around the folder. Earlier, she said quietly, when I asked that question, I know, I said, even though I didn't. Her breath caught, just slightly. For a moment, it felt like if either of us moved, leaned in, reached out, it would be irreversible. Instead, I stepped back. She nodded once, like she was grateful. Or disappointed. Maybe both. As I opened the door, she said my name, not loud enough to stop me, not soft enough to ignore. I turned. She didn't finish the thought, and that almost was worse than if she had. By the time it stopped feeling normal, it had already gone too far to rewind. It happened on a Sunday afternoon, quiet, inconvenient. I'd come by the shop to drop off a jacket my girlfriend had left behind. The place was technically closed. No radio, no engines, just the tick of cooling metal and dust hanging in the light. Mara was alone, sitting at the desk with nothing in front of her. She looked up when she heard the door, and for once, she didn't smile. She didn't reach for work or coffee or a reason. She just watched me like she'd been waiting, not for me exactly, but for the moment to arrive. I was going to text you, she said. I set the jacket down. About the jacket? No, she shook her head slightly. About this. There was no accusation in her voice. Just fatigue. Honesty without polish. I leaned against the counter, suddenly unsure where to put my hands. We don't have to talk about anything, I said. It sounded weak even to me. That's the problem, she replied. Silence settled between us. It wasn't awkward. It was heavy, like something shared but unacknowledged had finally grown too big to carry quietly. She stood, slowly, as if she didn't trust her balance. Came closer, but not close enough to touch. Her eyes searched my face, then dropped to the floor. I don't know what we're doing, she said. And I don't like not knowing. My throat tightened. I thought of all the almosts. All the moments I'd replayed in my head like they meant something because I needed them to. I never meant for it to be confusing, I said. I know, she replied. Too quickly. That's not what scares me. She folded her arms, then unfolded them, then let them hang uselessly at her sides. For the first time, she looked her age, not older, just human. Tired in a way confidence couldn't cover. You look at me like I remind you of something, she said quietly. And I look at you like I'm trying to remember who I was before I decided certain doors were closed. That landed somewhere deep. I didn't trust myself to speak. She took a breath that trembled. I keep telling myself this is harmless, that it's just conversation, just help, just quiet. She met my eyes then and didn't look away. But it isn't quiet in my head anymore. I stepped forward without thinking, then stopped. The distance between us felt intentional now, something we were both holding in place. I don't want to hurt anyone, I said. I don't want to be that person. Her mouth tightened. Neither do I. Another pause. Longer. The shop seemed to lean in. She reached out, not to touch me, but to rest her hand on the counter beside mine, close enough that I could feel the warmth. Her fingers curled slightly, like they were resisting an instinct. If this keeps going, she said, voice barely steady, someone's going to get hurt. I nodded. Yeah. She swallowed. Her eyes shone, but she didn't let anything fall. I just didn't expect it to be me, she whispered. I thought the worst part would be saying it out loud. I was wrong. The worst part was what came after, when she showed me why silence had felt safer. It was another late afternoon, gray and undecided. I was there to help clean out a storage room behind the office. Old parts, old boxes, things no one wanted to deal with. Mara worked methodically, like the task mattered more than it did. I followed her lead. We didn't talk much. It felt earned. She reached for a box on the top shelf, hesitated, then asked me to grab it instead. When I pulled it down, the bottom gave out. Papers spilled everywhere. Receipts, manuals, envelopes yellowed at the edges. Damn it, she muttered, crouching down too fast. We gathered the mess in silence. Then I noticed the photo. It was small, worn soft at the corners. A younger Mara stood beside a man I'd never seen, her head tilted toward him like it belonged there. He had his arm around her waist, casual and certain. They looked settled, like people who'd already decided something permanent. She saw it in my hand and froze. That's not, she stopped, then sighed. You can look. It's fine. I didn't say anything, just handed it back. She took it like it weighed more than paper. Sat on the floor with her back against the wall, knees drawn up. The confidence she usually wore didn't make it down here. He died, she said, staring at the photo. No warning. No build-up. 10 years ago. Car accident. One phone call, and that was it. I swallowed. I'm sorry. She nodded, like she'd heard it before. I loved him in the boring way, she continued. The kind that makes plans. We were supposed to open a place together. This place. She glanced around the cramped room. After he was gone, everything became about surviving, not choosing. I sat across from her, careful not to crowd the space. Is that why? She looked at me then. Really looked. You don't remind me of him, she said. That would be easier. I waited. You remind me of who I was before I learned how permanent loss could be. Her voice softened. Before I decided I shouldn't want things that might disappear. That landed quietly, but it changed the shape of the room. She laughed once, short and embarrassed. God, I didn't mean to dump that on you. It's okay, I said, and meant it. She folded the photo and slipped it back into the box, but her hands shook just enough for me to notice. I hate that part of me woke up again, she said. The part that imagines, that wonders. I didn't reach for her. Didn't say what I wanted to say. She stood slowly, brushed dust from her jeans, and met my eyes with something fragile and steady at the same time. This isn't about temptation, she said quietly. It's about memory. I nodded, even though it scared me more than if it had been anything else. As we finished cleaning, she kept her distance. But when I left, she said my name like she was testing how it felt in the open. And I knew then, whatever this was, it wasn't new to her. It was something she thought she'd already buried. It didn't fall apart all at once. It softened first. We didn't plan the conversation. There was no moment where one of us said we need to talk. It happened because the shop lost power during a heat wave, and the place went still in a way that made pretending feel unnecessary. No fans, no radio, just the open door and the sound of traffic far away. Mara sat on the floor this time, back against the counter, shoes off, tired in a way that had nothing to do with work. I sat a few feet away, close enough to share the quiet, far enough to keep it intact. This can't keep hovering, she said eventually, not looking at me. It's not fair to anyone. I nodded. I'd been circling that sentence for days, afraid of what would come after it. I know. She glanced over, like she was checking whether I really meant it. You don't argue much, she said. I don't trust myself to, I replied. That made her smile. Just a little. Then it faded. I care about you, she said. Carefully, like the words had sharp edges. Not in a way I planned. Not in a way that fits. My chest tightened, but I kept my voice even. I care too. She exhaled, long and slow. That's the problem, isn't it? We sat with that. No rush to fix it. The heat pressed down on us, heavy and honest. Somewhere outside, a car alarm chirped and then stopped. I don't want this to turn into something ugly, she said. I don't want to look back and feel like I broke something good because I was lonely. I thought of my girlfriend, of the version of myself that still belonged to that life. Neither do I. Mara shifted, her knee brushing mine. This time, she didn't pull away. Neither did I. The contact felt settled, not electric, not urgent. Just there. She reached out and rested her hand on the floor between us, palm up. Not an invitation, an offering. I placed my fingers in hers. Lightly, like we were testing the truth of it. Her thumb moved once, barely. A reflex. Then she stiffened, forehead tipping forward until it rested against my shoulder. No kiss. No rush. Just the weight of another person choosing to stay present instead of pretending. I'm glad you didn't make this easy, she murmured. Me too, I said, and meant something complicated by it. We stayed like that until the power came back, lights flickering on, the world resuming its expectations. When she finally pulled away, her eyes were clear. Steady. This is where we stop, she said softly. I nodded, even though part of me didn't want to. Even though another part understood why it had to end exactly here. She squeezed my hand once before letting go. That was it. No promise. No goodbye speech. Just the quiet understanding that whatever had almost happened had already changed us, and that we were choosing to carry it carefully, instead of letting it take more than it was owed. It's been months since that afternoon in the shop, the one with the heat wave, the quiet, the hand on the floor. I think about it often, not with regret, not with longing exactly, but with the sharp clarity of something that altered the shape of my understanding. I used to think love was defined by declarations, by bold moves, by certainty. Mara taught me otherwise. Sometimes love is quiet. Sometimes it's knowing the weight of what could happen and deciding carefully not to tip it. Sometimes it's about presence instead of possession, understanding instead of resolution. I saw her again a few weeks after that day, by chance at the bookstore she often claimed as her refuge. She smiled, small and knowing, the same way she did when she first let me touch her hand lightly. Not a confession, not a surrender, just acknowledgement that we shared something that mattered. She carried herself differently now, softer maybe, or just less burdened. And I felt it too, a shift I couldn't name, a loosening of something inside me that had tightened with longing and uncertainty. We didn't speak of the shop, of the heat, of the hand. That moment existed between us still, but unspoken, like a language we had invented and perfected. It wasn't stolen time, it was earned. It had changed how I looked at people, at relationships, at the way intimacy could exist without ownership. It taught me to notice the quiet moments, the subtle gestures, the pauses that speak louder than any words. Sometimes I replay little things, the way she laughed when she thought I wasn't watching, the tremor in her hands when she held the photo, the way her forehead leaned against my shoulder. Each memory isn't bittersweet. It's grounding. It reminds me that connection doesn't always need resolution, that care doesn't always need possession, and that sometimes the strongest form of love is letting it exist exactly as it is. I've noticed how I carry it with me now, in the way I linger over small gestures from friends, in how I notice someone's quiet struggle without needing to fix it, in how I let my own emotions unfold slowly, without rushing toward a conclusion. Mara changed me, in the subtlest, most profound ways, and I can't imagine unlearning any of it. When I walk past the shop now, I sometimes peek through the window. She's there, moving among engines and papers, focused and alive. Our eyes meet once in a while, brief and unremarkable, and yet the recognition is all it needs. We share the afterglow of something impossible to name, something that has settled into the spaces between us. And I smile. Quietly, knowingly, because I understand now. Some connections don't need a label, some love doesn't need a climax, and some moments, like her hand on the counter, her voice in the quiet, are enough to shape a lifetime. If this story made you feel something, let me know in the comments. Would you want more stories like this?